So here I am at St Cuthberts Mill, and I've decided to paint the leat which takes the water into the mill, which is all part of the paper making process. I'm only from up the road, so this very much ties in with the kind of work that I do. This landscape and these trees and water is very much me. So I'm going to dive in and just make some marks with the brush, just to sketch out the composition in my own mind. I'm just using raw sienna at this stage, just to get in the main areas of the trees, and I'm using a small rigger. I'm just mixing a darker colour for these distant trees, just so that I can get some dark colour in early. So this part is really a kind of a make or break for me. So here we go. Stood here painting here today, I think it brought home to me even more, really, seeing how much the paper making process is just such an important part of it, and watching it being made today was well, it's just fascinating, and made it, as I said, even more important, I think, for me to use this paper, being as it's so close to me.
David, this is the start of the paper making process. This is where we take our raw materials, such as this cotton linter, which we use for making Saunders Waterford. We will take other chemicals, such as filler materials, calcium carbonate, and we'll introduce them into a pulper, which is a giant blender. We take water, raw materials, combine them together into a slurry, which is then taken over to the paper machine for making into paper. And the paper machine is situated over that way, which we'll see in a minute. So David, this is the mould machine at St Cuthberts. Today we're making Saunders Waterford, and this is the vat where we're actually making the paper. All the while we're trying to remove water from the paper. The paper itself contains about 85% moisture at this point. As you can see, it can support itself through this section here. It transfers onto what's called the press section, and the press section is again removing water. It has woolen felt upon it, which is specially woven for us, and by pressing together by these two rolls here, it imparts the finish onto the sheet, and it also removes some more water from the sheet.
I'm using Millford paper, and I really like the way that the paint just sits on the surface and kind of skips along, really. It just suits the way that I work. I can work into it and just make marks, just putting in richer colours and darker marks, and just let the paint do its own thing on the surface of the paper. I'm just sketching in the background trees, just to give me a feel of this leak going off into the distance, and trying to make a painting rather than, or a study for a painting rather than a exact copy of what's here. Now I like using watercolour because of this, the way the paint just moves around, and it either works or it doesn't, so it is kind of hit or miss, really. And the way that the paint here is mixed together, that's just beautiful, and that is just the beauty of watercolour. So I'll try and keep that if I can. I tend to start my paintings with quite loose, light washes, and then build up the work as it goes along. Sometimes I'll put in the darks really early so that I've got a key, so that I know where to go with it. Other times things just happen, and then because it's watercolour, you just go with it, really.
The paper machine here is built in about 1906, so it's an old Victorian machine. At this point here, we've got the paper coming out of the drying section. The paper is fully functional at this point. You could write on it with a pen if you wanted to, but we're putting an additional sizing mechanism on the surface called gelatine. The paper goes through this size bath around these rolls. It's coated with gelatine, and then it has to be further dried. So we can see here the tear-off strips, which are used to actually give you a fourth decal edge on the sheet. We can see the decal edges themselves, and you can actually view the watermark as it goes down the paper machine. The guys on machine would stand here, and they would see if there's any problems within the paper machine, which they actually need to attend to. It then continues on down through the paper machine. We have a scanner here checking the weight and the moisture, and then the paper's wound up at this point on the reel up, and that basically is the paper making process.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Okay.
This is my normal working practice, doing studies on site and then taking them back to the studio to maybe work up larger pieces. So this part of the work is vital for me. I'll take photographs, make studies, anything really, so that the experience of the day soaks in, and then hopefully I can bring it back to mind when I'm working in the studio. The sights, the smells, the sounds, everything that goes on during the day. Hopefully try and recreate that kind of feeling that I had, that inspired me to paint the scene back in the studio. I'm just putting in these final reflections of these dark trees, and then that'll be it. I don't think there's much more I can do with this at this stage. As I said, I'm not completely happy with it, but I think that'll do for today.